Is China preparing for a major military escalation? China has just carried out a series of military drills and exercises. But are these military drills and live firing exercises a part of the 95th anniversary of the People's Liberation Army? Or are these exercises aimed to send a very clear military signal to the United States of America amidst reports that US House Speaker Nancy Pelosi may just be landing in Taiwan in the next 24 to 48 hours? I'm Gaurav Sawant. Are China and the United States now on a major collision course? Are war clouds on the horizon? We get to the latest, but first, as always, the headlines on India First. Political war breaks out over Shiv Sena's loudest voice, Sanjay Raut's arrest. Uddhav Thackeray claims his close aide has been framed by the Enforcement Directorate. Raut to be in Enforcement Directorate custody for the next 3 days. Agency claims they have ample proof against him. Parliament debates price rise after days of disruptions. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman insists India controlled inflation despite the pandemic and is still the fastest growing economy in the world. Congress MPs walk out. No document to show Smriti Irani or her daughter owned the Goa restaurant, says the Delhi High Court. Goes on to say that there was an intent to malign and damage the union minister's reputation. Amit Siddaramaiah and DK Shivakumar's face-off. SR Patil enters Karnataka Congress CM face race. Delhi goes dry because of Aam Aadmi Party's excise policy flip-flop. Nearly 500 liquor shops are shut. Pubs and bars running low on alcohol. China's military drills ahead of Nancy Pelosi's likely visit to Taiwan is our top focus. China's mega show of strength before Pelosi visit. China has brought out its military hardware, from its missiles to its aircraft to stealth frigates. China has carried out a series of military drills and live firing exercises, and China has announced these live fire drills off the coast of Taiwan. Drills, are they aimed at sending a very clear signal to the United States of America? Is China preparing to send out a military signal, a military warning to the United States of America? A live fire exercise by China off the coast of Taiwan. Reports of maritime notice for launching a missile. Now, this notice is going viral on Chinese social media platforms. Days after Chinese President Xi Jinping warned the US President Joe Biden, saying, if you play with fire, you will set yourself on fire. Reports both from Washington DC and Taiwan indicate that US House Speaker Nancy Pelosi will visit Taiwan. Is China escalating? Is China sending out a very clear signal to the United States of America with these live firing exercises?
As US Speaker Nancy Pelosi kicked off her Asia tour with a touchdown in Singapore. China released a video of its military exercises in Taiwan Strait. The message was clear and direct. It was another signal to Washington by Beijing, which had very recently warned the United States it was playing with fire by meddling in China-Taiwan affairs.
has incessantly challenged the sovereignty of China over Taiwan and even deliberately created tension in the Taiwan Strait. This is a disregard and infringement of the principles and purposes of the UN Charter. China has always respected the sovereignty of other countries and certainly hopes that its own sovereignty be respected by other countries.
While Pelosi's Asia stops have been announced, there is no mention of Taiwan yet.
We would like to tell the United States once again that China is standing by, and the Chinese People's Liberation Army will never sit idly, and that China will take resolute responses and strong countermeasures to defend its sovereignty and territorial integrity. What the US should do is to abide by the One China principle and the provisions of the 3 Sino-US joint communiques. Honor President Biden's pledge not to support Taiwan's independence and not to arrange Pelosi's visit to Taiwan.
If Pelosi were to visit Taiwan, it would be the first visit by a US speaker in the last 25 years. Analysts argue, if the US backs down at this stage, then China would gain an upper hand. On the other hand, Chinese President Xi Jinping aims to send out a signal of a strong leader as he looks to seek an unprecedented third term as Chinese premier. After Singapore, Pelosi is scheduled to visit Malaysia, South Korea and Japan. So will she visit Taiwan? That depends on who blinks first, Washington or Beijing. Bureau Report, India Today.
And this is getting very serious. The display of military hardware, from stealth frigates to jet fighters, from submarines to the DF-17 hypersonic missile. What signals is China sending out to the United States of America? Is this perhaps the clearest warning to the US not to go ahead with House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit? Or should this be seen as part of the PLA's 95th anniversary celebrations? Before we go to our guests, I quickly want to cut across. We are getting a reaction. Nancy Pelosi has just reacted. Let's listen into her.
I don't ever talk about my travel because, as some of you know, it's a security issue. It's a security issue for every member of Congress traveling, especially abroad. But for the Speaker, it is an additional security issue, and for those traveling with me. The President earlier in his term, talked about a strong emphasis on the Asian Pacific. He has visited there, as Vice President has visited there, the Secretary of Commerce and others, and we want the Congress of the United States to be part of that initiative. Of course, as a West Coast person, we see the Pacific as that's our home. We're part of that as well. That is not to diminish the importance of our transatlantic relationships as well.
So let's quickly try and make sense of these latest developments. Joining me on India First, Lieutenant General P.J.S. Pannu, former Deputy Chief of the Integrated Defence Staff. The General has served extensively along Ladakh-based Fire and Fury Corps. Brian Hoy is the editor of New Bloom, and Brian joins us from Taiwan, Taipei. Also with me is Inar Tanjan. Inar Tanjan is a senior fellow of the Taipei Institute, understands China very well. But Brian, on the show today, I want to come to you first. What do you make of the Chinese military exercises and live firing drills ahead of Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan? And what's the latest? Is she visiting?
First of all, thanks for having me. But I think what the military drilling actually illustrates is that Chinese repertoire to responding to the Pelosi visit is actually somewhat limited. For example, it was expected that China would step up air incursions or military exercises or naval drilling in response to Pelosi's visit because of the fact that this is what China has done in the past. However, this time around, what I think is notable is that China has not actually escalated the air incursions into Taiwan's air defense identification zone, that is the area in which aircraft are obligated to identify themselves, where they're from, where they're going, their nation, that sort of thing. And that has actually not really been stepped up before the Pelosi visit. This is usually how China tries to hit back quickly against U.S. diplomatic visits to Taiwan under the Trump administration or the Biden administration. And so I think the fact that it's not done that is actually a sign of how it doesn't have a lot of ways to respond. It can respond the usual ways, stepping up drilling and military threats and that sort of thing, but I don't think it actually responds too well with the Chinese public.
Okay. In our tangent, prepare for war. The PLA's 80th group message on Chinese social media platform Weibo. Now, is that a signal ahead of Nancy Pelosi's proposed visit to Taiwan, or is this just a regular 95th anniversary of PLA message?
Yeah, well, it is the 91st anniversary. I mean, it was, 8/1 is the day. It just happens to be in the background of, or the foreground of Nancy Pelosi's ill-timed visit to Taiwan, if she goes. We still don't know for certain. Rumors are swirling. Obviously, she's relishing the attention with 70% or almost 70% of Americans with their primary concern about inflation, cost of living. She's decided that the best way for her to do domestic politics is to go abroad and look tough on China by going to Taiwan and try to take that political card away from the Republicans. She's playing with fire. I don't know why she thinks domestic politics trumps statesmanship, but that's her outlook.
Okay. So this prepare for war message is not a signal to the United States, in your view, in our tangent?
It is a very, very strong signal. I don't think there's any question that the PLA, the party, and the leadership see this as a tantamount close to an act of war. Remember, in 1973, the whole basis of the U.S.-China relationship was the one China policy. It resulted in Taiwan being removed from the United Nations and de facto decertified as an independent country. You can't walk away from that. You can't say, oh, we didn't mean it.
Okay.
That is the basis of it. So at this juncture, yes, this is seriously undermining the very beginning of the relationship and therefore could result in a complete fracture between China and the U.S., military or economic or both.
That's a big point you're making, that this could lead to a fracture when it comes to US-China ties, military or economic. General Pannu, what do you make of reports of the live-firing drills by China off the coast of Taiwan and the message of the PLA's 80th group, the move to the east, prepare for war?
Well, you don't celebrate anniversaries like this by making maneuvers, but largely what is happening in the world is known to everybody, that China takes advantage of the global disturbance as it took after COVID. It attacked certain posts on the Indian territory and also made maneuvers elsewhere. Waiting in the wings now is that as the Ukraine-Russia conflict is maturing, I suppose there is now a muscle flexing and signaling which is going on. I think it is a political, diplomatic and military posturing to the secondary and the primary arcs. And primary arc being for the China-Taiwan. And Taiwan, really speaking, is equivalent to Ukraine, as Ukraine is to Russia. Taiwan is more or less to China. Okay. And if the Western world is concentrating in the South China Sea and Taiwan, I suppose that is the contest which they're having. But I think both are testing waters. Both have domestic constituencies to answer. Both are undermining each other's military and political and diplomatic dominance in this area. But I think both are trying to muscle flex in all the fields of political, diplomatic and military understanding of it.
We are watching those images of military muscle flexing by China right now, live firing and a lot of images. Of course, as of now, they're unverified, live firing drills being carried out. Some of these images have been put out by the Chinese government itself, by the armed forces themselves. But Brian Hoy, Taiwan had also conducted some military drills and some bomb drills last week. So what's the buzz in Taiwan? Is there an apprehension that Nancy Pelosi's visit could lead to an escalation of Chinese hostilities and the violation of Chinese fighter jets? You know, you were saying that ADIZ or Air Defense Identification Zone violations usually increase. They haven't just now. But is there an apprehension not only will those violations increase, China could actually fly its fighter jets over Taiwan?
So intrusive Taiwan's air defense identification zone actually take place quite far from Taiwan. As a result, when there is this kind of military drilling, there's usually not a response from Taiwan. The military responds only if the air fighters cross the median line of the Taiwan Straits usually. But from the general public, there's not a response. There's more focus usually on celebrity gossip, dash cam footage, sex scandals, and that sort of thing. The domestic media cycle goes on. And that is actually also true of the Pelosi visit.
Okay.
I think that threats from China have gone on so long against Taiwan that there actually is not a lot of alarm regarding even the Pelosi visit. And so I think that is one way in which Western perceptions of what is going on in Taiwan really need to speak more to local voices, or what is occurring on the ground here, or how Taiwanese perceive these threats that are directed at Taiwan.
Okay. And in our tangent, has the Chinese president actually painted himself in a corner by warning US president about playing with fire? Now he has to look tough and act tough, or can he still dial down the tensions?
Well, he's going to have to take some sort of action. He said he would. The question is, does it have to be military or can it be economic? The U.S. right now is at 9.1% inflation. If China were to exert tariffs, that could go up by another 2%. As I said, that would probably be the most effective way of showing the American people that irresponsible statesmanship does not benefit them when they're concerned about their livelihood, about milk, about infant formula for their children, about having enough heat or the price of gasoline. I don't think they're going to appreciate somebody posturing in Taiwan, which is going to cost them even more money.
Okay. General Pannu, but is Xi Jinping also under pressure ahead of a third term? He cannot be seen as weak. Will he be compelled to escalate? And in your appreciation and the way India looks at it, who would be on top of the escalation ladder? Should there be escalation, whether economic or military?
I think the Communist Party in China, as also PLA, constantly do things to make Xi Jinping happy and also make him look strong, and that is exactly what he expects them to do. So I think they're all hand in glove to ensure that China looks strong, and I think this is where the whole problem lies, that while there is a lot of mistrust on China, the whole world has been looking at China from COVID onwards, and how China has been maneuvering around debt trapping the whole world in bits and pieces. And you see the result in Sri Lanka, how debt trapping can result into disaster. And I think after the disaster, I think further they would go in for influencing these areas and actually making military maneuvers there. South China Sea is one thing, I think, where muscle flexing has been happening for very long. And I think that is the main concern of China, that nobody should come and challenge them in the South China Sea, and more so Taiwan, which they think is a self-rule island, which actually belongs to them. But the Western world has a narrative written against China. So I think China would do anything to make noises, to look strong, and continue to have claims over Taiwan. And that is exactly what is happening.
So it will remain at just making noises, because while China may claim, Brian, while China may claim the Taiwan Strait, you have the American Navy and their carrier battle groups that have been carrying out regular exercises, as have other countries, including India, with the United States of America, to ensure sea lanes of communication remain open and free Indo-Pacific. Has Taiwan wargamed China's response to Nancy Pelosi's visit? And what is the appreciation on ground? What can China do? What will China do, given Xi Jinping's re-election coming up and this prepare for war rhetoric on Weibo?
It's a very good question, actually, because I think that, for example, China, there can be a lot of military threats and a lot of bluster, but what will the impact on, for example, China's economy be if you actually attack Taiwan? Similar to much of the world, Taiwan is the major source of the world's semiconductors, and that includes for China. Reportedly, even Taiwanese semiconductors are present in the missiles that China has aimed at Taiwan. And so what happens then if you're actually targeting a key supplier for your own supply chains that is coming from Taiwan? And you think about the size of Taiwan's economy, it's something like 50th largest out of the, 20th largest out of the world's 200 or so countries. And that is not insignificant. And you compound the economic impact of a Chinese invasion of Taiwan onto that. So would actually the Chinese Communist Party be able to weather the blow to their credibility, their legitimacy politically from an attack on Taiwan? All those lives, I mean, you know, some estimates are like tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands even, according to Ian Easton, of lives lost. So what then? And so is it actually something that the CCP can weather at this juncture? That is also a question.
Okay. So in our tangent, the bluff, the bluster, clearly not taken seriously by Taiwan. China may say, we will not sit idly by. China will take a resolute response, strong countermeasures to defend integrity. Now, these must be some words used by China. Clearly, Taiwan is not impressed, and Nancy Pelosi visit may still happen. Will that be a major loss of face for Xi Jinping?
You're assuming it is bluster. I do not assume that it is bluster. There are going to be consequences from this, whether they're military or economic. I don't know. I'm hoping that they will be economic.
Okay.
To war, you could have a real, you could lead to literally the end of the world. And I'm surprised that people are taking this so casually. This is another World War I where people are literally sleepwalking into a Thucydides trap created by the U.S. desire to maintain its hegemony.
So what you're saying is that this could lead to a world war and annihilation. I mean, these are really, really strong words. But again, Jel Pannu, is this bluff? Is this bluster?
When you talk about a conventional war, things are a little different, because that is where the kinetic warfare has a direct impact and direct fear of losing lives. But what happens in the modern warfare is that space and cyber domains are global common, and there is no direct threat which is very clearly discerned by people at large or globe at large, and things look quite normal on the surface of it. Similarly, even naval operations, when you are in the high seas on the international waters, it is also like global common. So whatever happens in the global common, Navy, cyber and space domain, it looks quite distant. However, when two superpowers come so close, though P5s do not, they have enough checks and balances not to go to war. But I think the fear is of miscalculation. Should something happen in the domain that I was talking about, the cyberspace, and in the naval domain in high seas, I suppose then later on this miscalculation can translate into something which is more disastrous. Sir, that is shooting bullets and shooting missiles directly, which is kinetic war.
Cyberspace, the war is on between the two countries, and it's been on for quite some time now. Cyber attacks on each other's facilities have been on, and China has been launching a series of cyber attacks on multiple countries. But General, do you see any impact of any of this along the LAC, whether in Arunachal Pradesh, Sikkim, middle sector, Uttarakhand, or in Ladakh?
China has been building a military capability infrastructure or related to military buildup in last 2 years. After the Chinese pushed the Indian troops, and they were responded very ably by the Indian Army and the Indian Armed Forces, I think they stepped back to rework this strategy, and I think they are building a capability not to get embarrassed again. So therefore, there are reports all along the Arunachal and central sector and eastern Ladakh. They are building airports, helidromes, and bringing in the technology such as 5G, making sure that the entire technology, the digital frontier comes up intact, so that they could push around with technology in that area, because for them to lose life by a soldier is a very, very big dent. And I think they want to prepare a ground where they can win war without fighting. But at the same time,
that clearly didn't happen in Ladakh. That clearly didn't happen in Ladakh. So, and as you very rightly said, China was embarrassed. Is China preparing to be embarrassed once again in Taiwan? I mean, given Brian's response and the response we seem to be getting from Taiwan, clearly Taiwan is not intimidated. In our tangent, Brian Hoy and Gerald Pannu, as always. Many thanks for joining me here on this India First special. Will Nancy Pelosi's aircraft be landing in Taipei in the next 24 to 48 hours? We'll be tracking that story very closely. That is all I have time for on India First this evening.